From Jeffrey Dahmer's highly involved next-door neighbor to his relationship with the deaf Tony, Netflix's Dahmer story mixed up many facts and got some wrong. Dahmer's next-door neighbor. Niecy Nash's character in the show, Glenda Cleveland, has moved many viewers to tears with her experience with Jeffrey Dahmer while living next to him. While Glenda is a real person and also involved in the Dahmer story, what Netflix got wrong is that she wasn't living next to Jeff. The real neighbor who lived in the same building as Jeff is Pamela Bass. Glenda was living a few blocks away from Jeff's building and never met Jeff or spoke to him, contrary to how Netflix played it in the show. However, some of Glenda's encounters with Jeff in the show perfectly portrays Pamela's experience with Jeff in real life. Pamela and Jeff had occasionally bumped heads regarding complaints of the smell. She and the neighbors thought that this was due to bad hygiene, but Pamela actually thought Jeff was a nice young man and never suspected him until he was arrested. Also, Glenda wasn't at the scene when the 14-year-old Conorak Symphathum phone was discovered as he tries to escape from Jeff. Conorak was seen by Glenda's niece, Nicole Childress, as she saw him fleeing and looking all bruised and wounded. Nicole called the police immediately and Jeff got to her before the police did. So when the police came, they listened to Jeff and ignored whatever Nicole had to say. Seeing how she was helpless and trying to save the child, Nicole went to get Glenda. And before they could get outside, everyone was gone. According to how it was on the show, Glenda repeatedly called the police about her concerns for the child's safety. But in real life, she didn't do that as a neighbor, but as a very concerned person in the neighborhood. One of the most engaging scenes of the show had Jeff approach Glenda, trying to get her to eat a sandwich he had made. This intense scene confused the viewers because they weren't sure if Jeff was trying to poison Glenda or if his intentions were good. But the truth is, this never happened in real life. Pamela, Jeff's real neighbor, said she was kind of friendly with Jeff and even had a few drinks at his house occasionally. The neighbor also mentioned that Jeff liked to share and that at times he would prepare sandwiches for her and some other neighbors. But thinking about it after Jeff's crimes were discovered only made Pamela uncomfortable about what might have been the real content of the sandwich. Jeff let Ronald live. Due to how Jeff knocked out so many of the people he got rid of, it's hard to see many survivors of his evil intentions. Although on some few occasions his targets always attempted to escape and only about 3 to 4 were able to get away, with the last leading to his arrest. One of those who escaped was Ronald Flowers, and the show linked his getaway with the intervention of Jeff's grandmother. In the show, his grandmother ensured that Jeff took Ronald to the train station. Ronald later woke up in the hospital and remembered Jeff had taken him. Although Jeff lured Ronald to his place after he saw that his car had broken down and made him unconscious after giving him a coffee, it wasn't Jeff's grandma who saved him. After Jeff made Ronald black out, he saw that Ronald weighed more than he was expecting, and he would be too heavy for him to move around for his evil plans. So Jeff decided to let him go. And when Ronald woke up in the hospital, he didn't remember how he got to the hospital, but only the bruises on his body explained he had been in danger. No blood drink. In the show, Jeff took up the job with Milwaukee Plasma Center, where he helped get blood donations from patients visiting the clinic, and this really happened in real life. But Netflix overplayed it and got some parts of this scene wrong. This scene shows how Jeff's behavior started forming from day one. The horrific scene portrayed how monstrous Jeff could be when he decided to steal and drink blood from his work rather than eat a normal dinner. But according to Jeff's confession, this didn't happen. And the closest to what was played in this part of the show was that he sneaked away to the center rooftop and tasted a bit before spitting it all out. Judge disregards the hurt family. Judge William Gardner, who oversaw the sentencing of Jeff after he was caught almost defiling Conorak's brother, Somsak Symphathum, was heavily hated for how he handled the case. The judge had been affectionate towards Jeff and even said he reminds him so much of his grandson. So instead of sending him to prison and stopping him from committing another crime, the judge only sentenced Jeff to spend 1 year in a house of correction. But this wasn't the only thing that got people angry about the judge in the show. When the Symphathum family, whose child escaped from Jeff, were represented by their father in court, the judge dismissed the words on the excuse that he couldn't understand his broken English. He later got another member of his family to interpret, but still, the judge paid no attention to their concerns or distress. Despite how embarrassing and annoying this part of the show was, it never happened. What happened sounds even more terrible because the Symphathum family were never informed of the court case, so they weren't present at the sentencing of Jeff. Awarding police. Viewers could not stop talking about the 14-year-old that was almost saved from Jeff's cruelty and how the police officers, Bolsazak and Gabrish, messed it all up. Even though they were suspended temporarily with pay after their misconduct got to be known, the two officers later got called back and even given awards. It's one of the outrageous things in the show, according to the viewers, when the scene shows the officers being celebrated and awarded as Officers of the Year. Although they were restored and called back to their jobs, thankfully, they never got celebrated or awarded, as portrayed by Netflix. Tony and Jeff's relationship. Getting a background story to who Tony Hughes was, his challenges, his family, and how he lost his hearing is a very deeply emotional part of the show. And according to the Netflix portrayal of how Jeff and Tony met, it was short-lived, and Jeff only got rid of him the next morning after they met, when he feared he might not come back after their first night together. Netflix's portrayal isn't accurate because people who were close to Tony and understood how much he longed to be loved outside of his family said Tony knew Jeff for about a year or two before the incident happened. And this means Tony had taken Jeff for a friend for a long time before he turned in on him. Jeff's glasses. Jeff's eyeglasses are one of the objects that have gotten much recognition since Netflix released the Dahmer story, and there was never a time he was seen without them. Even during his trials in the show, Jeff always wore his eyeglasses. Contrary to how Netflix played out this part, Jeff went to court without his eyeglasses because he didn't want to look into the eyes of the family of those he had hurt. Because he can't see properly without his glasses, his stepmother said he intentionally left them out to avoid panicking and seeing everything as it played out. And even in the show, in one of his interviews after his arrest, Jeff said, "I felt uncomfortable looking anyone in the face. I didn't want to see anyone's face clearly. It helped me disassociate myself from what was happening." But despite this fact, Netflix still showed him in glasses and had him fully interested in the emotions playing out in court. Jeff's door locks. The last survivor of Jeffrey, Tracy Edwards, who also made his arrest possible, was shown in the first episode of the show to be struggling with Jeff's apartment door as he tried to make his escape. Although he wasn't in his right state of mind, he was determined to run out despite the extra locked door. The locks almost delayed his escape, and Jeff could have caught up with him instantly, but in reality, Jeff's apartment door only had 2 locks and not as many as what Netflix portrayed. A father's story. Immediately after Jeff got arrested and his crimes were revealed, the show started to bring some things together concerning his childhood and upbringing. While the father was convinced it was due to the medicines his mother was taking when she was pregnant with him, he also blamed himself for getting him interested in cutting up animals. But that isn't entirely true. According to Ronald Dahmer, just as he explained in his book, A Father's Story, he never cut up an animal with Jeff or showed him how to do one when he was a child, as narrated on the show. The only thing Lionel taught Jeff was how to preserve the bones of animals when he noticed Jeff had special interests in biology and chemistry. Lionel felt that because he had a PhD in chemistry, he could teach his son about the same interest in chemicals. Glenda's daughter's arrest. In the final parts of the show, many people became insensitive towards Jeff's crimes and were seen hanging out at the front of the house before it was demolished. And in one of those scenes, Glenda's daughter, Sandra Smith, got angry and shoved one of the people taking pictures at the front of the building and even broke his camera, which later led to her arrest. This scene never happened, and Sandra never got arrested, as there's no record to prove it. There have been speculations by many people who witnessed the crime that this part of the show was just an imaginary part put into the story to pass the emotional and distressing message it wanted to get across after Jeff's arrest. How has this changed what you know about the Dahmer story? Share your thoughts in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.